It's gonna be okay. We're here to help you through this.
The morning sunlight crept through the blinds, painting thin gold lines across the kitchen table. Mark Evans sat in the quiet, his hands wrapped around a chipped mug of coffee that had long since gone cold. The house was still, save for the faint hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of cartoons drifting down the hallway. He glanced at the clock. 6:47 a.m. Another day, another routine. He took a slow breath, feeling the familiar weight settle on his chest, a heaviness that had become as much a part of him as the faded tattoo on his forearm, or the calluses on his hands. He heard the soft patter of feet, then the creak of the floorboards. His daughter, Sophie, appeared in the doorway, her hair a wild halo, her pajamas mismatched. She rubbed her eyes and offered him a sleepy smile. "Morning, Daddy." "Morning, Bug," Mark replied, forcing a brightness into his voice. He set the mug down and opened his arms. Sophie climbed into his lap, tucking her head beneath his chin. For a moment, the world shrank to just the two of them, the quiet, and the warmth of her small body pressed against his. "Do I have to go to school today?" she mumbled. He smoothed her hair, untangling a stubborn knot. "You do. But it's Friday, and after school, we can get ice cream. Your choice," she grinned, her missing front tooth making her look even younger. "Can I get sprinkles?" "Sprinkles, chocolate sauce." "The works," he promised. She wriggled off his lap and disappeared down the hall, her energy already outpacing his. Mark stood, stretching the stiffness from his back, and moved through the motions, packing her lunch, finding her shoes, braiding her hair as best he could. He watched her eat cereal, her legs swinging beneath the table, and felt a pang of gratitude mixed with something sharper, a fear that he was always one misstep away from letting her down. By 7:30, they were out the door. The drive to school was quiet, Sophie humming to herself in the backseat, Mark's mind already racing ahead to the day's obligations. He had a shift at the hardware store, bills to pay, and he checked his phone, a reminder for his own appointment at the clinic. He'd almost forgotten. He'd been rescheduling for weeks, telling himself he was too busy, that he didn't need it. But the truth was, he was afraid. Afraid of what he might have to say out loud. Afraid of what he might hear in return. He pulled up to the curb, and Sophie leaned forward, her face serious. "You'll pick me up, right?" "Always," he said, and meant it. She hopped out, backpack bouncing, and ran toward the school doors. Mark watched until she disappeared inside, then let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. He sat there for a moment, the engine idling, the world moving around him. Other parents came and went, their lives seemingly effortless, their smiles easy. Mark felt like an imposter among them, a man pretending at normalcy. He finally put the truck in gear and drove across town, the city waking up around him. The clinic was tucked between a laundromat and a shuttered bakery, its sign faded but welcoming. He parked in the back, out of habit, and sat for a moment, staring at his reflection in the rearview mirror. He looked tired, older than his 3 or 4 years. He ran a hand over his jaw, feeling the roughness of stubble, and tried to summon the energy to go inside. The waiting room was nearly empty. A woman with a toddler sat in one corner, scrolling through her phone. An elderly man dozed in another chair, his cane propped beside him. Mark checked in at the desk, the receptionist barely glancing up as she handed him a clipboard. He filled out the same forms he'd filled out a dozen times before, his answers unchanged. No new medications, no allergies. No, he wasn't experiencing chest pain. Yes, he sometimes felt anxious. Yes, he sometimes felt sad. He handed the clipboard back and sat near the window, watching the world outside. The minutes ticked by, slow and heavy. He thought about Sophie, about the way she'd looked at him that morning, trusting and unafraid. He wondered if she'd ever know how hard he tried to keep it all together, how much he wanted to be enough for her. A door opened, and a nurse stepped into the room. She was younger than he expected, maybe late 20s, with dark hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. Her scrubs were a soft blue, her badge clipped to her pocket. She scanned the room, her eyes landing on him. "Mark Evans," she called, her voice gentle but clear. He stood, tucking his hands into his pockets. She smiled, a small, reassuring curve of her lips. "I'm Nurse Harper. I'll be taking care of you today." "Just a checkup," she said, her tone light, almost casual. He nodded, following her down a narrow hallway. The walls were lined with faded posters about hand washing and flu shots. She led him to a small exam room at the end of the hall, the kind that always smelled faintly of antiseptic and something sweeter, maybe lavender, maybe just the memory of it. "Go ahead and have a seat," she said, gesturing to the exam chair. He sat, the paper crinkling beneath him. Nurse Harper closed the door behind them, the click of the latch louder than it should have been. She moved around the room with practiced ease, checking supplies, washing her hands, making notes on a chart. "It's just you and me now," she said, her voice softer, almost conspiratorial. Mark felt a flicker of unease, quickly masked by habit. He watched her, trying to read her expression, but she was all professionalism until she wasn't. She turned, her eyes meeting his, and for a moment, he saw something else there. Not pity, not judgment, something like understanding. Nurse Harper pulled a rolling stool over and sat across from Mark, her posture relaxed but attentive. She glanced at his chart, then back at him, her gaze steady. "So, Mark, how have you been feeling lately? Any changes since your last visit?" He hesitated, searching for the right words. "About the same, I guess. Tired. Some days are better than others." She nodded, jotting something down. "That's honest. Most people just say fine and leave it at that." Mark managed a weak smile. "I figured you'd see through it anyway," she grinned, a flash of warmth breaking through her professional exterior. "I might, but it's nice when people don't make me work so hard for the truth." She reached for the blood pressure cuff, her movements efficient but gentle. "I'm going to check your vitals, okay? Just relax your arm for me." He extended his arm, feeling the cool fabric wrap around his bicep. Her fingers brushed his skin, steady and sure. The cuff tightened, and he focused on the sensation, the rhythmic thump of his pulse echoing in his ears. "Your daughter, Sophie, right?" she asked, glancing at the chart again. "Yeah. She's 7. That's a good age. My niece is about the same. Keeps us all on our toes." Mark chuckled, the tension in his shoulders easing a little. "She's a handful, but she's my world." The cuff deflated with a soft hiss. Nurse Harper noted the numbers, her brow furrowing slightly, a little high, but nothing alarming. "Are you nervous?" He shrugged. "Maybe a little. I don't love doctors' offices." "Most people don't," she said, her tone understanding. "But you're here. That counts for something." She set the cuff aside and reached for a thermometer. "Under your tongue, please," he complied, the silence stretching between them. He studied her as she worked, her calm, the way she seemed to fill the room with a quiet confidence. There was something about her presence that made it easier to breathe, like she carried a piece of peace with her wherever she went. The thermometer beeped, and she checked the reading. Normal. "See, nothing to worry about." She moved on to the stethoscope, looping it around her neck. "I'm going to listen to your heart and lungs. Deep breath in for me." He inhaled, the cold metal pressing against his chest. He tried to keep his breathing steady, but his heart thudded faster, betraying his nerves. "Sorry, it's cold," she murmured, warming the stethoscope between her hands before trying again. "Better?" "Yeah," he said, his voice softer. She listened in silence, her face close to his, her eyes focused. He could smell her shampoo, something clean, almost floral. When she finished, she sat back, her expression thoughtful. "Your heart's racing a bit. Is it just me, or is something else on your mind?" Mark hesitated, then shook his head. Just life, I guess. It's been a lot lately. She nodded, not pressing. It usually is, especially for single parents. He looked at her, surprised by her directness. You get a lot of us in here. More than you'd think. People trying to hold it all together. Sometimes it helps just to say it out loud. He looked away, his hands twisting in his lap. I don't really talk about it. Not with anyone. She was quiet for a moment, then said, You don't have to, but you can if you want. He glanced up, meeting her eyes. There was no pressure there, just an open invitation. He swallowed, the words caught in his throat. She stood and moved to the counter, washing her hands again. The room was quiet except for the running water and the hum of the lights. Mark watched her, feeling the urge to fill the silence, to say something, anything. My wife left when Sophie was 2, he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. One day she was there, the next she was gone. No explanation, just her gone. Nurse Harper turned, drying her hands, her expression softening. She didn't say anything, just listened. I didn't know what to do. Mark continued, the words tumbling out now. I was angry, scared. I kept thinking she'd come back, but she never did. So I just kept going. For Sophie, he looked down, ashamed of the tears pricking at his eyes. Some days I feel like I'm doing okay. Other days I feel like I'm barely holding on. She crossed the room and sat back down, her hands folded in her lap. That sounds incredibly hard. He nodded, unable to speak. You're doing better than you think, she said quietly. Just showing up for your daughter, for yourself. That's not nothing. He let out a shaky breath, the tension in his chest easing just a little. She smiled, a real one this time. You don't have to be perfect, Mark. You just have to be present. He nodded, the words settling over him like a bomb. She glanced at the chart, then back at him. I'm going to step out and let the doctor know you're ready. But before I do, she stood, moving to the door. She paused, her hand on the handle, then turned back to him. You're not alone, you know, even when it feels like it. He met her gaze, something shifting inside him. Thank you. She nodded, then quietly locked the door. The sound was soft, but it echoed in the small room. Just you and me now, she said, her voice gentle, but firm. Let's take a few more minutes. No rush. Mark's eyes flicked to the door, then back to Nurse Harper. The click of the lock was subtle, but it changed the air in the room. He felt exposed, as if the walls had closed in a little, but there was no threat in her posture, only a kind of gentle insistence, a promise that this moment was for him, and he didn't have to rush through it. She sat back down, her hands resting lightly on her knees. Sometimes, she said, people need a little space to breathe, to say what they can't say out there. She nodded toward the hallway, where the muffled sounds of the clinic continued, distant and irrelevant for now. Mark tried to find his voice. I'm not used to talking about myself. Not like this. She smiled, understanding. Most people aren't, but you'd be surprised how much lighter you can feel just letting a little bit out. He looked at his hands, the calluses and scars, the evidence of years spent working, building, fixing. I guess I don't want to seem weak. Sophie needs me to be strong. Nurse Harper shook her head gently. Strength isn't about never breaking. It's about knowing when to ask for help. About showing up, even when it's hard. He let her words settle, feeling the truth in them. He thought of all the nights he'd sat awake, listening for Sophie's breathing, worrying about bills, about the future, about whether he was enough. He'd never said any of it out loud. Not to his friends, not to his family, not even to himself. She leaned forward, her elbows on her knees, her eyes kind. What's the hardest part for you, Mark, right now? He hesitated, then said, the loneliness. I never thought I'd be doing this alone. I miss having someone to talk to at the end of the day. Someone who gets it. She nodded, her expression softening. That's a heavy thing to carry, and it's okay to say it out loud. He swallowed, the words coming easier now. Sometimes I worry that Sophie's missing out, that she needs more than I can give her. I try to be both parents, but I know I can't fill every gap. Nurse Harper's voice was gentle. You're giving her what matters most. Your love, your time, your presence. That's more than a lot of kids get. He looked up, meeting her eyes. Do you have kids? She shook her head. Not yet. But I've seen a lot of families come through here. I've seen what happens when a parent gives up. And I've seen what happens when they keep trying, even when it's hard. You're in the second group, Mark. That's something to be proud of. He felt a lump in his throat, unexpected and raw. Thank you, he said, his voice rough. She smiled, then reached for a box of tissues on the counter and set it within his reach. Just in case, she said, her tone light. He managed a laugh, wiping at his eyes. I'm not usually like this, she shrugged. Maybe you should be. Maybe we all should. The room was quiet for a moment, the kind of silence that felt safe, not awkward. Mark let himself breathe, really breathe for the first time in weeks. Nurse Harper broke the silence. Can I tell you something? She asked. He nodded. When I was in nursing school, I had a patient, a single dad like you. He was tough, never wanted to talk about himself. But one day, he broke down. Told me he felt invisible, like no one saw how hard he was trying. That stuck with me. I promised myself I'd always try to see people, really see them, not just their symptoms. Mark listened, the story settling over him like a warm blanket. She continued, You're not invisible, Mark. I see you, and I think you're doing better than you think. He let the words sink in, feeling something inside him loosen. It's hard to believe that sometimes. She nodded. I know. But it's true. He looked at her, searching for any sign of insincerity, but found none. Her eyes were steady, her presence unwavering. She stood, moving to the counter to jot a note in his chart. I'm going to recommend you come in a little more often. Not because I think you're in trouble, but because I think you deserve a little more support. Would that be okay? He nodded, surprised by how much he wanted to say yes. Yeah, that would be good. She smiled, closing the chart. Good. And if you ever need to talk about anything, not just your health, you can ask for me. I'll make time. He felt a surge of gratitude, unexpected and overwhelming. Thank you, Harper. Really. She unlocked the door, the sound softer this time, less final. You're welcome, Mark. Take care of yourself. And give Sophie an extra hug from me. He stood, feeling lighter than when he'd arrived. As he left the room, he glanced back at Nurse Harper. She was already preparing for the next patient, but she looked up and gave him a small, encouraging nod. Mark walked down the hallway, the weight on his shoulders a little less crushing. He checked out at the front desk, the receptionist offering a perfunctory smile. Outside, the sun was higher, the day brighter. He climbed into his truck and sat for a moment, letting the engine idle. He thought about what Harper had said, about being seen, about showing up, about not having to do it all alone. He thought about Sophie, about the way she looked at him with trust and love, about the promise he'd made to always pick her up, to always be there. He started the engine and pulled out of the lot, the city moving around him. For the first time in a long time, he felt a flicker of hope. Maybe things wouldn't always be this hard. Maybe, just maybe, he could let someone in. The drive home was quiet, the radio off, the city's noise muffled by the closed windows. Mark's thoughts drifted, circling around the morning's conversation. He replayed Nurse Harper's words, the way she'd looked at him, not with pity, but with genuine understanding. It was a rare thing, he realized, to feel truly seen. He wondered how many people moved through their days, desperate for that same recognition, that same gentle acknowledgement that their struggles mattered. He pulled into the driveway, the house standing silent and still in the late morning sun. He sat for a moment, hands resting on the steering wheel, reluctant to break the fragile peace he'd found. Eventually, he forced himself out of the truck, the familiar creak of the door grounding him in the present, inside. The house felt emptier than usual. Sophie's drawings were taped to the fridge. Crayon rainbows, stick figure families, a lopsided heart with daddy scrawled in careful letters. Mark traced the edge of one picture with his finger, a smile tugging at his lips. He made a mental note to tell her how much he loved her art, how much it meant to him. He moved through the motions of the day, laundry, dishes, a half-hearted attempt at tidying the living room. The silence pressed in, heavy and insistent. He found himself wishing for the chaos of Sophie's laughter, the endless questions, the way she filled the house with life. He checked his phone, scrolling through messages he hadn't answered, calls he hadn't returned. There was a text from his sister, asking if he wanted to come over for dinner that weekend. He hesitated, thumb hovering over the screen. He knew she meant well, but the thought of sitting at her table, surrounded by her perfect family, made him feel like an outsider in his own life. He set the phone down, guilt gnawing at him. He knew he should reach out more, let people in. But it was easier to keep the world at arm's length, easier to pretend he was fine. The hours slipped by, slow and unremarkable. Mark busied himself with chores, anything to keep his mind from wandering too far. He made a sandwich for lunch, ate it standing at the counter, staring out the window at the overgrown backyard. He thought about mowing the lawn, then decided against it. There would be time for that later. As the afternoon wore on, he found himself thinking about Harper again. He wondered what her life was like outside the clinic, if she had someone to come home to, if she ever felt the same loneliness that haunted him. He imagined her in a small apartment, maybe with a cat, maybe with a stack of books on the nightstand. He wondered if she ever doubted herself, if she ever questioned whether she was making a difference. He shook his head, chiding himself for the fantasy. She was just a nurse, just someone doing her job. But still, her words lingered, echoing in the quiet. The clock crept toward 3, and Mark grabbed his keys, heading out to pick up Sophie. The school parking lot was a flurry of activity, parents chatting, kids darting between cars, teachers shepherding stragglers toward the buses. Mark leaned against the truck, scanning the crowd for his daughter. She appeared at the top of the steps, her backpack nearly as big as she was, her hair coming loose from its braid. She spotted him and broke into a run, her face lighting up with a smile that made everything else fade away. "Daddy," she called, launching herself into his arms. He caught her, lifting her off the ground, her laughter ringing in his ears. For a moment, the world was simple, just the two of them, safe and together. "How was school?" he asked, setting her down. "Good. We had art, and I made you something." She dug into her backpack, producing a crumpled piece of paper. It was a drawing of the two of them, holding hands beneath a bright yellow sun. Mark's throat tightened. "It's beautiful, Soph. Thank you." She beamed, slipping her hand into his as they walked to the truck. "Can we get ice cream now?" He laughed, the sound surprising him. "You bet." Sprinkles and chocolate sauce, just like I promised. They drove to the ice cream shop, the windows down, the warm breeze tangling Sophie's hair. She chattered about her day, her friends, her teacher, the story she'd written about a magical dog. Mark listened, letting her words wash over him, grateful for the distraction. At the shop, they sat at a small table by the window, Sophie's face smeared with chocolate, her eyes bright with happiness. Mark watched her, feeling a swell of love so fierce it almost hurt. He wondered if she'd remember these moments when she was older, the simple joys, the quiet afternoons, the way he tried, every day, to make her feel safe and loved. On the drive home, Sophie grew quiet, her eyelids drooping. Mark glanced at her in the rearview mirror, her head resting against the window, her breathing slow and even. He felt a wave of tenderness, a fierce protectiveness that made him vow, once again, to do whatever it took to give her the life she deserved. Back at the house, he carried her inside, tucking her into bed for a late nap. He sat beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead, watching her sleep. In the stillness, he let himself hope, just a little, that maybe things could get better. Maybe, with a little help, he could find his way back to himself. The afternoon sun slanted through the blinds, casting long shadows across the living room floor. Mark sat on the edge of the couch, a mug of fresh coffee in his hands, the television murmuring quietly in the background. He wasn't watching, his mind was elsewhere, drifting between memories and the present, between the weight of the past and the fragile hope that had begun to take root. He thought about the way Nurse Harper had listened to him, the way she made space for his pain without trying to fix it or brush it aside. It was a rare gift, he realized, to be met with such patience. He wondered if he could learn to offer that same grace to himself. Sophie's soft breathing drifted down the hallway, a gentle reminder that he wasn't alone. Not really. He set his mug down and wandered into her room, pausing in the doorway. She was sprawled across the bed, one arm flung over her stuffed rabbit, her hair a tangled halo on the pillow. He smiled, feeling a surge of gratitude for her presence, for the way she anchored him to the world. He sat beside her, careful not to wake her, and let his thoughts wander. He remembered the early days after his wife had left, the confusion, the anger, the endless questions with no answers. He'd been so sure he was failing, so certain that he couldn't possibly be enough. But somehow, day by day, he kept going for Sophie, for himself. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. She stirred, her eyes fluttering open. "Daddy," she mumbled, her voice thick with sleep. "Hey, Bug, just checking on you." She smiled, her eyes drifting closed again. "Love you. Love you too, Sif," he whispered, his heart aching with the force of it. He sat there for a while, watching her breathe, letting the quiet settle around him. Eventually, he stood and made his way back to the living room, the house feeling less empty than it had that morning. He picked up his phone, scrolling through his contacts. His finger hovered over his sister's name, then moved on. He wasn't ready for that yet. Instead, he opened a new message and typed a few words to Nurse Harper, unsure if she'd even see it. "Thank you for today. It helped more than I expected." He hesitated, then hit send, the message disappearing into the ether. He set the phone aside, feeling both exposed and relieved. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of small tasks: folding laundry, sweeping the kitchen, sorting through Sophie's outgrown clothes. He found a pair of tiny shoes, scuffed and faded, and held them in his hands for a moment, remembering the first time she'd worn them. She'd been so proud, so determined to do everything herself. He smiled, tucking them into a box of keepsakes. As evening approached, Sophie woke, her hair wild, her cheeks flushed. She padded into the kitchen, rubbing her eyes. "Can we have pancakes for dinner?" she asked, her voice hopeful. Mark laughed, the sound light and easy. "Why not? Pancakes it is." They cooked together, Sophie standing on a chair. To reach the counter, her hands sticky with batter, she giggled as he flipped the pancakes, cheering when he managed to catch one in the pan. They ate at the table, syrup pooling on their plates, the conversation meandering from school to superheroes to what kind of dog they might get one day. After dinner, they curled up on the couch, Sophie tucked under his arm, a movie playing softly on the screen. Mark felt the tension in his body ease, the worries of the day receding. For a little while, it was enough, just the two of them, safe and warm. The world outside held at bay. When the movie ended, he carried Sophie to bed, tucking her in and kissing her forehead. She clung to his hand for a moment, her eyes wide and serious. "Are you happy, Daddy?" she asked, her voice small. He hesitated, caught off guard by the question. He wanted to lie, to tell her he was fine, but something in her gaze made him pause. "I'm trying to be," he said honestly. "Some days are harder than others, but having you makes it easier." She smiled, satisfied with his answer. "I love you. I love you too, Bug. Always." He sat with her until she drifted off, her breathing slow and even. Then he made his way back to the living room, the house quiet once more. He checked his phone, surprised to see a reply from Nurse Harper. "You're welcome, Mark. Remember, you're not alone. If you ever need to talk, I'm here." He read the message twice, a sense of comfort settling over him. He typed a quick reply, "Thank you, I mean it," then set the phone aside. He stood at the window, looking out at the darkening sky. The world felt a little less heavy, a little more manageable. He thought about the day, about the small moments of connection, the kindness of a stranger, the love of his daughter. Maybe, he thought, that was enough. Maybe. For tonight, he could let himself rest. Night settled over the house, quiet and deep. Mark wandered through the rooms, turning off lights, checking locks, the familiar rituals of closing down the day. He paused in the hallway, listening to the hush that had replaced the earlier chaos. Sophie's door was ajar, a sliver of lamplight spilling onto the carpet. He peeked in, watching her sleep, her small body curled around her rabbit. The covers kicked to the foot of the bed. He pulled the blanket up over her shoulders, brushing a kiss across her forehead. She didn't stir, lost in dreams. He made his way to his own room, the bed unmade, a stack of unopened mail on the nightstand. He sat on the edge, rubbing his eyes, exhaustion settling into his bones. He thought about the day, about the clinic, about Harper, about the way she'd listen without judgment. He wondered if he'd ever be able to do that for himself, to meet his own pain with the same patience and care. He lay back, staring at the ceiling, the darkness pressing in. His mind wandered, chasing old memories, his wife's laughter, The way she used to dance in the kitchen, the sound of her voice calling Sophie in for dinner. He remembered the night she left, the silence that followed, the way the world seemed to tilt on its axis. He'd spent months searching for answers, replaying every conversation, every argument, trying to find the moment when everything had changed. He'd never found it. All he'd found was the ache of absence, the slow, grinding work of moving forward. He closed his eyes, willing himself to sleep, but rest wouldn't come. Instead, he found himself replaying the conversation with Harper, the way she'd said, "You're not invisible." He wondered if she really meant it, if she could see the parts of him he tried so hard to hide. He rolled onto his side, staring at the faint glow of the streetlight outside. He thought about reaching out to someone, his sister, an old friend, anyone who might understand. But the words felt too heavy, too tangled to say out loud. He settled for sending another message to Harper, a simple thank you, hoping she'd understand what he couldn't put into words. He drifted in and out of sleep, dreams fractured and restless. He woke before dawn, the house still and silent. He lay there for a while, listening to the quiet, letting the darkness settle around him. Eventually, he got up, moving through the house on autopilot, coffee, shower, the slow return to routine. Sophie woke early, her hair wild, her eyes bright. She padded into the kitchen, climbing onto a chair and watching him make breakfast. "Can we go to the park today?" she asked, her voice hopeful. He smiled, grateful for her optimism. "Sure, bug, after I finish a few things around the house." She grinned, swinging her legs beneath the table. "Can we bring a picnic?" "Absolutely. You can help me pack it." They spent the morning gathering snacks, peanut butter sandwiches, apple slices, a handful of cookies. Sophie insisted on packing her favorite blanket, the one covered in cartoon animals. Mark watched her, marveling at her resilience, her ability to find joy in the smallest things. At the park, Sophie ran ahead, her laughter echoing across the grass. Mark spread the blanket beneath a tree, watching her climb the jungle gym, her confidence growing with every step. He felt a pang of pride, mixed with something softer, a hope that she'd always carried this lightness, the sense of possibility. He sat on the blanket, sipping coffee from a thermos, letting the sun warm his face. He watched other families, mothers and fathers chatting on benches, children chasing each other through the playground. He felt the old ache of loneliness, but it was less sharp than before, dulled by the memory of Harper's words, by the simple joy of being present with his daughter. Sophie returned, breathless and flushed, collapsing onto the blanket beside him. She dug into the snacks, chattering about her adventures, her words tumbling over each other in her excitement. "Daddy, can we come here every weekend?" she asked, crumbs dotting her chin. He smiled, brushing them away. "We can come as often as you want." She leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder. "I like it when it's just us." He wrapped an arm around her, holding her close. "Me too, bug. Me too." They spent the afternoon in the sun, the hours slipping by in a haze of laughter and quiet contentment. Mark felt the weight of the past begin to lift, replaced by something lighter, something like hope. As the sun dipped low, they packed up their things and headed home, Sophie dozing in the backseat, her hair tangled, her cheeks sun-kissed. Mark glanced at her in the mirror, his heart full. That night, after Sophie was asleep, Mark sat at the kitchen table, a notebook open in front of him. He began to write, not for anyone else, but for himself. He wrote about the day, about the park, about the way Harper had made him feel seen. He wrote about his fears, his hopes, the small victories that made the hard days worth it. He wrote until the words ran out, until the ache in his chest eased. He closed the notebook, feeling lighter, more whole than he had in a long time.